Hello and welcome to our first webinar in our digital marketing series. Is your senior living website working for or against you? So first of all, I would like to go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. First is Paul Trusick, who is the Director of Digital and Inbound Marketing with Senior Living Smart. Say hi, Paul.
Hi, everyone, and I am just here to introduce myself. We're going to jump off and then jump back on at the very end. I just wanted to give a quick background into how I've been in the digital space. I've been doing this since about 2001, so in the infancy of internet, back when things were much more difficult before content management systems, when you had to hand submit everything for SEO. So in that time, I kind of wore many hats, and in the last 15 years, the exciting part is to see how once what were siloed pieces of internet marketing all came together and are integrated. So we will obviously touch on some of those items during this presentation, and if you have any other questions for me, specifically as it relates to digital marketing, I'd be happy to answer that at the very end.
Terrific, thanks, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And our next presenter is Charlene McManus. She's the Solutions Director for North America with Empole. Welcome, Charlene.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me here. Like Paul, I've been in marketing for over 20 years, 15 of those in the digital space, and 5 of the past years in lead generation, content marketing, and the HubSpot space. So I'm really excited to be here today and talk to you guys a little bit about what's changed in digital and what that can mean for your industry.
Terrific. Thanks, Charlene. So, is your senior living website working for or against you? So your website is key in delivering a digital marketing strategy. We know that a great website attracts, engages, and builds relationships with your prospect. And a great website also reflects your brand, delivers high-quality content, and is easy to navigate. Today, your website needs to do just more than tell people where your community is located and what services you offer. So today we're going to do a walkthrough of an anonymous but a real senior living website audit and show you what to look for when you're evaluating your website. But first, I'm going to take a quick poll. So the question is, how often do you audit your website? Okay, so the number one time frame that everyone audits their website was yearly at 50%. Second was quarterly at 25%, monthly at 17%, and 8% said never. So hopefully we're going to help everybody find out what's really important when auditing their website. Thanks so much. Okay, Charlene, so why do we need a website audit and how often should we be doing it?
So I think, as you alluded to earlier, Andrea, every website, I think we've gone past the point where every business knows they need a web presence. In the new generation of websites, every website needs a job. It needs to be working actively to support your business goals. And you really don't know how well it's doing that unless you're auditing your website. So the real value of an audit is to take a look at all the different pieces that influence your website and figure out if not only is it doing its job, but is it doing its job well to move your business forward. Typically we see these, depending upon how active you are and how much change is going on in your website, we like to see a deep dive into your website about every 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Charlene. Just a few areas of auditing that we want to focus on. We start, obviously, with content. That's key. We look at social media and how some of your social media links are created and how that's interlinked with your website. Technical performance, so everything on the back end. These are things that you don't necessarily see from a search engine standpoint as engines are crawling your site. But it definitely has an effect on your end users who are digesting website content. And it could be really obvious things. It could be host related. And then security is another facet that we we'll go into during the audit.
You definitely want to make sure that when you're taking a look at your website, you're answering some big picture questions here. You know, can the people who are looking for your businesses and the services that you provide, can they actually find your business? So findability is a big component. Another thing that we're going to be looking at is your website safe from attack? You know, and is it functionally working well? So there's definitely a technical side of that. We want to make sure that people, once they get to your website, can find what they need. You can also hear this called sometimes as user experience, but it's making sure that the information they're looking for is easily, quickly available with as few clicks as possible. And finally, with social community, social media, are you creating a community? Are you creating a brand? And are you creating a conversation?
Great, terrific. Thanks, Charlene. So you made a point about, you know, this is how people find your website. So everybody raise your hands if you want more website visitors. Everybody should have their hand raised. So if you think about today, the way people find your website, one is they can type your name right in the browser, but that's an audience you already have if they know your name and can type it right into the browser. You can pay for traffic by buying an email list, but don't. It's expensive and a little bit illegal as well. And then you can also pay for traffic by placing tons of paid ads, which isn't illegal but can get very expensive. So let's talk about some of the ways that we can drive traffic to your website.
So as you can see by the title of this slide, blogging is a fantastic way to bring traffic to your website. It actually does a lot of good things for your overall presence. When you think about bringing people to your website, it's a combination of content, search engine optimization, keywords, and all these things that we're going to talk about today. But when you boil it down to its basic, I like to tell this little story about why blogging is good for your business. Every individual blog on your page, every individual blog on your site is its own page. So think about every page on your website as a fish hook that's in the water. And you're fishing for, of course, visitors. They're trying to find you, they're searching, and they can find these hooks and come into your website. So the more pages you have, the more hooks in the water, the more likely you are to attract that traffic. We'll get into keywords a little bit later, but keywords can work like the bait on each one of these hooks. And again, if you're using the right bait, it's attracting the right fish, you've got the right content on the pages. Blogging can really be productive in bringing traffic to your site. It's an opportunity to educate, help people find the questions that they're trying to answer, and help people find solutions to their problems. So blogging is a fantastic way to share your knowledge, engage your audience, and attract that to your website.
And real quick, if I can add, you probably saw it on the previous slide, the neutral face. It's not a sad face, it's not a happy face. We're going to go through a few of these examples based on a previous audit. And you might see from this slide, the audit that we gave another community, what they were doing is they were posting. They did have an active blog, but it was all about them. It was news, things that are happening there in the community between residents and events. What they didn't have is they didn't have any of that value-added content that created them as a area expert in their community. So that's what we're going to give you a few examples of how to do that, so that when you do go to a blog, it's not so news and events centric, but actual resource related. This is Human Good. You can see most sites that you go to, it'll just say blog. But what they did here, because they want to be a resource for those looking for information about the community, they just named it resources. And in that, they broke it down between blog items, certain guides, videos. In this example, a few of those guides include supporting an aging parent, how to know when it's time to get help, taking an online memory loss test, and then fall prevention. So all of those are educational resources, and some of those include components, which we will also review, that you can put on your website to help engage people. So you're not just providing content that's great for SEO purposes, it's introducing fresh information on the website, but it's also lead generation based by giving some engagement tools for the end user, and we'll review those in a little bit.
Great, thanks, Paul. The next one is social media. So Charlene, why social?
Well, you hear a lot out there about Me Too, that we should be on social because everyone is. We should be on channels because everyone is. And there's actually a little nugget of truth to that. Your audience is using these channels to communicate, to investigate options, to educate themselves. And they're also using these to get referrals from folks in their network. Hey, what do you think about? So it's important to engage in social media because your prospects are there. And social provides a great opportunity for you to promote your content. Again, through blogging, we're talking a lot about being able to provide that educational information that makes you the authority and that helps build trust with your audience. And social is a great way to get that information out and to share it. Social media also offers you an opportunity to create a brand. You know, we're starting to see a lot of this in the marketplace where individual communities are starting to break out of that mold of everyone saying the same thing and to create a unique brand, a unique presence, a unique feeling for their communities. And social media is a great opportunity for you to spread that brand, introduce it, promote it. Social media, of course, is also a conversation. You talk to your audience and your audience talks back. So it's important to not just push out information, but to be listening, to creating conversations. You know, what are people asking about? How can you help? How do you engage them on a one-to-one basis? And finally, of course, if you're promoting this content, having that conversation, sharing your brand information, ultimately it's going to result in traffic coming back to your website. As people get more interested in what you're sharing, it's going to bring that traffic to your site.
And just to follow up on what Charlene mentioned, I think a lot of groups, what I've seen is they're using social media now to engage families and employees, but where they're falling a little short is, again, generating traffic back to the website. So if you do have educational content, you do want to continue talking about your services for, again, prospects who are doing the research and coming back to your channels. And again, consistency and frequency is key. You don't want to have huge gaps in your timeline. You know, that inconsistency, I wouldn't want that to raise a red flag if someone, a prospect, is coming to your social channel and wondering why there's been downtime for weeks on end, very sporadic. So I do believe that consistency and frequency is key in maintaining social media channels.
Oh, great. Thanks, Paul. So here's a big question that I'm sure everyone asks is, what exactly is search engine optimization? What is SEO?
Well, Andrea, SEO can mean, unfortunately at this time, it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. And so what I want to do is break this down into exactly what this means to me. You know, Google has one goal. Google is trying to figure out, when you type a question or a phrase or a couple of words into that search bar, they're trying to figure out which pages are going to get you what you want. You know, and depending upon how broad or narrow your search is, that can be more or less difficult for Google. So what we're trying to do with search engine optimization is to make it as easy as possible for the search engines to understand the point of every single page on your website. Every page on your website should focus on one main idea. It's kind of like when we were all in school and we learned about writing. Each paragraph should have one main idea. So each page on your website should be talking about one thing. And there are certain ways, using keywords in particular, that we can help it, these search engines and the bots that are crawling your site, to have that, you know, aha moment. this page is about X. So when someone searches on that, this is a good page to serve them up. The opposite side of that is also true. So search engine optimization is really focused on those bots and those search engines, but there's a human component to it as well. So once Google has done their magic and you type in your request and it gives you a page of results and a page of ads, and you can see that there were like 1.6 million hits in less than a second. You're then going to, as a human being, you're going to scroll through that page of search engine results and you're going to read those little blurbs of information, and through that you're trying to figure out which one of these is the best match for what I had in mind, and click through into that page. So there's a human component to search engine optimization, as well as a mechanical component to work with those machines. So we want to make sure that we're using keywords and phrases that are appropriate to the page content, that we're very clear about what people are going to find there, and that we use that keyword in specific locations. So this is where you guys may have heard about metadata comes from. Metadata is, people like to say data about data, but really it's making the search engines understand what the page is about, and it's creating a little bit of an advertisement on that search engine results page that says, hey, you're going to like this, click here. So we're not going to really go into the technical side of where these things go, but we will break down that search engine optimization is, again, helping connect people with the content on your page faster.
That's great. So Paul, from a non-techie side, what's important to look at with your SEO?
Well, I think one thing that people miss is when they're creating the content for their site, whether it's homegrown or if an agency is doing it, they don't really pay attention to that humanistic aspect. Who are you writing for? And making sure that you have all of these items in place. These have been around since the beginning of the web, and Google grades these on, they change their algorithm quite frequently, but the fundamentals are always going to stay. They're always going to be a part of the ranking, how you rank on your site. So there are some tools out there that I think best practices, title, meta description, the amount of content are probably the biggest facets of making sure you avoid thin content. And there are some tools out there. Screaming Frog is a web app, and you can run your current website against that. We have our own audit tool that does something similar that we will provide you at the end of this presentation. But making sure that you not just do this up front, but that you continually come back and review and compare how your site's ranking against the keywords or keyword phrases that you're looking for. You know, when people are writing content, you think, oh, well, I'm just going to stuff the site with senior living. I'm just but people aren't necessarily, you don't want to be #1 on just the term senior living. You want to think about localized ranking. You want to make sure that that keyword phrase is incorporated into that content and that it's speaking to the right audience. So there are, from the humanistic aspect, definitely writing toward your audience. But using some of those web tools, you know, you can kind of cross-check how your site's performing now by using some of those tools. But I would focus most on title tag, meta description, and the density of content on the website.
Paul, if I could add to that, I just want, you know, we hear a lot about what's going on with the aggregators lately, with the folks that are selling leads into senior communities. And owning your own terms in search engine optimizations for senior living, for the name specifically of your organization, for the geographic location it's in, can have really strong benefits for these communities. If you're coming up in the first 3 organic search results, if you're outpacing those aggregators and where you show up on the first page, it can bring more traffic to your site that you're not paying those aggregators for. And I think that's something that's really important to mention here.
Great, thanks, Charlene. So technical performance, why is that?
Technical performance is pretty critical. You know, the attention span for a human being is pretty short. I think it's technically shorter than a goldfish. And our expectations are getting higher and higher and higher. So how quickly your page loads, how well it works on mobile, the size of the pages, all these things really affect the page load speed and whether or not someone is going to wait for that content or whether they're going to bounce. And if you have high bounce rates, you can get dinged by the search engines that can bring your overall ranking and authority down. So with some website maintenance and taking care of some of these little technical issues, you can prevent the loss of traffic and you can do some good things for your search rankings.
Yeah, absolutely, and not just from bounce rate from a human side. I think it's most websites in this day and age, they are not plain HTML. Thank goodness, because back in the day when you were coding in just HTML, you did not have a scalable website that could grow. Now we have content management systems, and there's a beauty. It's a double-edged sword, but you have great ways to build and prototype sites out. But what usually ends up happening, whether or not it's your original web developer or it's just the age of your website, what happens is over time you're continuing to add content. You're adding third-party plugins, and these are more from the technical side. But when sites start slowing down because there might be JavaScript conflicts. And you can see like there could be a loop, there could be a lot of things going on with the host. And if those aren't addressed and cleaned up, people start losing some of that ranking. So not only are you getting people bouncing off your site because they're frustrated with the load time, you get dinged from the search engines when their robots are also frustrated in crawling your content. So it's great every quarter, every year to do an audit just on the technical performance of the website. I think that there's a lot of fat that can be trimmed when a developer goes back in and reviews kind of what's in place, and they decide, oh, you know what, we're not using this plugin or that plugin. Let's go ahead and remove it, and then review the technical performance of our website, see how fast it speeds it up.
Paul, is this the time that we wanted to also mention some security issues?
Yeah, actually, that is on the next slide.
Good thoughts.
Voila. So the SSL security, that's been coming up quite frequently in the last 2 or 3 years. It's a must to avoid certain hacks. A lot of hosts have this already in place. They have security measures in place. But if you're not with a reputable host and you don't have an SSL certificate, you're really running the risk of being targeted for malware. And it's not necessarily that people are out to ruin the senior living industry, but they're getting into the website. They're using the host in ways to spoof other people, using the resources of the host and your website, and you obviously want to avoid that if at all possible. So there are ways to incorporate that on the side of the host, making sure that the redirects are functioning properly, especially if you have a website change. You don't want to lose any of those rankings. So that's one thing that most agencies fail to complete, is when a website or a major change happens, making sure those redirects are in place as well.
Yeah, and if you don't have an SSL certificate, it can show up in Google search as an unsecured site, which can actually, maybe freak out a visitor and have them avoid your site altogether. And further to your point on WordPress plugins, if those are not up to date, they can certainly be a security breach. The overwhelming number of sites on the internet today are WordPress. That is an open source technology, and that does introduce a few vulnerabilities. A lot of the hacks that do happen, and that do happen through WordPress sites, come in through plugins that are not up to date. So there are some security issues that maybe shouldn't frighten you, but could pretty easily be closed up. We can close up those loopholes and create a more secure site.
Yeah, and I think SSL, given the last year or two, I think it's becoming so popular that a lot of hosts are, if you sign up with them, what they do is they give you a year free. But I think there's going to start to be a movement of hosting offering SSL as part of their package for free, part of your monthly or annual hosting fee. I think a lot of people are going to start giving that out for free because they realize the importance of it now, and also that it does help with your online rankings.
Great, thank you. I knew it was important in terms of security not to get hacked, but that was great information about how it impacts your SEO. So thank you. We're going to do another quick poll. So we talked about how often you have about 3 seconds for your page to load before people get impatient and bounce off. But then once they are on your page, how long do you have to engage visitors to your website?
So we have a very smart audience today. They guessed correctly that you only have 8 seconds to engage visitors to your website. So 31% of our audience said 8 seconds, another 31% said 15 seconds, 23% 30, and 15% said 45. But don't forget, you only have 8 seconds.
And I'll be honest, I've been on websites where it takes 8 seconds for the page to load.
So now you're doubly out. So Charlene, what's the value of engagement on your website?
Well, you certainly want to keep people on your website. You want them clicking through multiple pages, and ultimately you're going to want them to exchange some information with you by filling out a form like the one you see here. We talked a little bit earlier about every website needing a job. So for a site that does mostly for a website that deals mostly in referrals, or a business that deals with referrals, their website is going to be mostly a validation site. So you hear about the site, you come to it, it needs to meet your expectations. Other brands are using their websites to build communities, aggregate information. They have jobs. But for most of us, we're going to be using our website for lead generation. And to do that, we have a form like the one that's here. So you want to provide enough content, answer enough questions, that the visitors to your website start to trust you a little bit. And then you want to be able to give them something that's really valuable. The currency of today's internet is the exchange of information. We've all been there. We've all been there where we were really interested in something that a website had to offer because it was going to help us learn something, it was going to help us do our job better. And we take a look at that form field and we put our cursor in the box, and we really have to stop and think about it. Because as soon as you put your email address in, or your phone number, or your name, you know what's going to happen. You know you're going to get contacted. Somehow you're going to get on a mailing list, you're going to get a phone call, somebody's going to contact you. So it's kind of a big deal to decide that you want to be able to give that permission for them to contact you. And what you're giving in exchange has to be pretty valuable. And the more valuable the information that you're providing, the more information you can ask from these forms. So your contact's going to really be wondering, is it worth it? And the answer needs to be emphatically yes.
Yeah, and I think in our industry there's always been this argument: do we put pricing on our website? Do we keep it off? And I've seen a trend. A lot of communities are gating that content. So again, it's something as simple as having your brochure online, and if people are really serious about, if they're comparing, if they're going off to other competitor sites, they do want to have a ballpark figure of what that pricing is. And that's just one example to generate some interest. If you know that people are expecting pricing in a brochure, and then that's going to be changed out on a regular basis, that's another way that people would engage with your website if they're ready to take that step. And I think we're going to go into some other areas of engagement on the next slide. We've seen some communities incorporate on their website. So this goes a little bit above and beyond a typical form to schedule a tour or to download a brochure. Rubric's a survey tool. So I think earlier, whenever you saw the example of Human Good, there is a survey on there about memory care. And this is a tool where you can embed this directly on your website, and you are able to score based on your questions the immediacy of need and what type of service the family member who's filling out that survey, what area they might be looking for, if it's independent, if it's assisted living, if it's memory care, just based on a few quick questions. So they get a score, and that information is aggregated through Rubric, our survey tool. Now we also have live chat. Live chat isn't like one of the annoying chats you see on e-commerce sites where people are trying to get you to buy a tangible item that gets shipped to you. Live chat it's HIPAA certified. The folks that work there are college certified, and they are hired for empathy. So there's a script that's developed specifically for our industry to answer immediate needs, especially when you don't have members of the community, of your staff. They're able to be on that live chat 24/7. And then finally, we have a tool that it's kind of stood out from the rest, and it's next-gen tools. For those communities that have floor plans, you're probably used to seeing just quick one-dimensional line drawings of floor plans that they can download via PDF. Next-gen tools takes it a little bit further with their room planners and floor plans. They are not Flash, they are HTML, but they're embedded on the website. And what's great about them is you can format the room, you can see the actual square footage, you can place furniture. So those that are a little trepid about moving, they can kind of see what they might be looking at as far as downsizing. And then as a last step, what they can do is they can share that. Once they're done creating that floor plan, they can share it with other family members. And again, all of this is recorded engagement on the website, and it definitely assists with lead generation.
Great, thanks, Paul. So we talk a lot about Google Analytics. What do we need to know about it, and why is it important?
So earlier in the presentation, we've touched on a couple of times that your website needs a job. And you really don't know how well it's doing a job unless you can track and measure it. So again, doing an audit like this is going to be really helpful, but also digging into your analytics, setting up goals and making sure that you're reviewing them on a regular basis. Most of the websites we look at do have Google Analytics installed, but it's not going to do you any good unless you take a look at it and it has something specific to measure. So it's always important to keep in mind what is the job you're looking to do, and how well is our website accomplishing that, and analytics can certainly help.
And as a side note, a complement to Google Analytics that most forget about is Google Search Console and Webmaster Tools. We spoke a little earlier about not just technical performance, keywords, but also security. And the few times, very rarely has it happened, we have received a notice about a malware attack. And it was great having Google Google Search Console and Webmaster Tools installed, because they were immediately able to identify and rectify the problem by giving some pointers on what script, how the site was hacked, and what your next steps were to mediate that and get the site back to good health. Again, that's a complement. It's another free service that Google provides, and it's great to have that interlinked as a complement to analytics.
Right. And why is mobile important?
So more and more visitors are using mobile devices more and more frequently to access all kinds of information. And it's not just millennials. You know, when you take a look at the data, and this is available in your analytics to see if people are accessing your site from a desktop, a tablet, or a mobile device, we're just seeing that more and more traffic, it's about 60-40 at this point, is coming to websites looking for information. And it's important to think about how your website looks. You know, even if they're responsive, there may be some changes that need to make to optimize that view. And additionally, to keep in mind how your emails look. Are your emails set up specifically to be read on a mobile device? We've all been in those situations where we're standing in line for a coffee or something else, and the first thing we do is just get a quick glance at our email. So more and more, this is becoming important, and it should be something that you're definitely checking and checking in on a regular basis.
Great,
And
thank you.
especially, especially as the adult child is, everyone's on the go. So there might be some really quick information they need that could be as simple as a phone number. With mobile, there are ways that you can turn on or off certain content that you would normally see on a desktop. So you can also highlight email, phone numbers, quick contact information, or even quick form values for someone that's on the go on their phone, on their tablet, that needs to get in contact with the community sooner than later and doesn't necessarily have immediate access to the desktop version of that site.
Great, thank you. So it sounds like it's not just one thing, it's a whole collection of things that really kind of make your website a winner.
It is. You know, we often talk about your website being the new front door to your community. It's the way people access the information they need to learn about you and what you have to offer. But your website is also your hub. It is the hub of your online presence, and it brings all of these tools together. It is a centralized and unified message that everything kind of goes out from and comes back to. So a website is getting more and more important in creating a full multi-channel online presence for your organization.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This next slide just kind of gives you a brief overview of what we're going to be covering in our next webinar, which is what is inbound marketing. And just because we're running out of time, there's a couple of questions that I want to get to, but this gives you a sneak preview. And these are some of the things we'll also be covering in our webinar series. So we'll give you the link if you want to continue on and learn more about inbound marketing and social media, content marketing, and all that fun stuff. So we do have some questions, which is exciting. So the first one is, how often should I blog?
Hi, everybody. So I'll jump in there. The more you blog, the more traction you're going to get and the faster it's going to go. So for some people, that can mean they can blog twice a week. They can be blogging every day. For most organizations that are getting started, that's not really going to be feasible. Google is looking for new content to be presented on your site all the time. So a good round number is once a week, but if you can only get it to once a month, that's okay too. I probably wouldn't go any lower than once a month, so I'd shoot for that once a month, once a week to get you started, and maybe look towards twice a week in the future.
Great. The next question is, should I do a newsletter? And I'm thinking they're probably meaning an e-newsletter.
I think you can kind of look at that twofold. I think the e-newsletters are great for families of residents that are currently at your community. Depending on your subscriber list, if people are shopping around, they want to see what engagement you have. I've seen various instances where you actually present that newsletter on the website as a PDF download. And again, you can link that newsletter to social media, so you can, again, generate more traffic to your website by including a newsletter. And again, newsletters are also time and resource intensive. So depending on how big your team is, you might want to scale your newsletters from once a month to once a quarter. It could also be a seasonal newsletter. So every 3 months you can highlight what the community has been up to. And I think there are ways, as I mentioned earlier, news and events being shared online are just one facet of blogging. Obviously, we want to introduce more educational content, but think that if you are going to create a newsletter, if you send it out to your mail group, that's great. It wouldn't hurt to share that on the website and through social media as well.
Yeah, I'd also build on that by saying, start with the goal. What do you want the newsletter to be doing for your organization? Are you sharing information with folks who are families of current residents, where you want them to know kind of the activities and what's going on? Is it a brand building exercise in that way, or a client retention? Are you looking to use this to supplement your ongoing lead generation program? So once someone fills out a form and you get their information, are you using that as a sales tool? And is it possible for your organization to segment that list so that not everyone in your newsletter list is getting the same thing? So folks that are maybe more interested in memory care, if you have that line of business, are getting information that is relevant to their process versus someone who's looking for independent living. So it's really good just to map out kind of what is this going to do for my business. Again, as Paul mentioned, they are time and labor intensive, like all marketing activities. So really be thinking about, what's the goal and how is this going to benefit my business if I'm going to be investing in it.
All right. A couple more questions. How often should you email your website contacts before you actually aggravate them, I guess?
Well, you're gonna get a various run of the gamut as far as aggravation level, but you also don't want to. You want to be top of mind. You want your prospects to have your community at the forefront if they're shopping around, but you also want to make sure, as Charlene mentioned, segregating those lists. So you don't necessarily want family members to be getting one thing versus prospects. I think it's pretty standard to do once a month email communication, especially if that is butting up with newsletter content, specific newsletter content that's relevant to that prospect. Especially the fact that they've opted in, they've subscribed to your list, so they know what to expect. They want to make sure, obviously, they don't jump off, unsubscribe if that content's not relevant. So I think it's important to make sure that your newsletter lists are segmented, as Charlene said.
Right.
If we're talking about email that is supporting the sales funnel, I think the rate of communication should increase as the prospect gets closer to being a sales-ready conversation. So someone who's just kicking tires and sniffing around and doing some research isn't ready to move in now. Stay in touch with them maybe once a month or so. But as someone who is already downloading floor plans and pricing and ready to move today, you can connect with them a little more frequently, maybe once a week. So just think about if you were in the shoes of that person, how often would it be appropriate to communicate with them?
Great.
And if you are a sales qualified lead, speaking to our next webinar, we're going to get a little bit heavier into inbound marketing and marketing automation and actually the timing of those email communications.
Great. A little sneak peek. So 2 last questions. One is, what is a bounce rate? That's a great question.
So what happens is that Google can see who comes to your page and immediately leaves, someone who visits no other pages on your website. That is your bounce rate. And if you think about your own traffic and your own Google use, maybe you put in a search term and then you look through the results and then you choose where you want to go. You get to the landing page, you can't find what you're looking for, maybe it's not what you thought it was going to be, it's not quite the right fit, and boop, you hit your back button and you go right back to that Google results page and try and find another one. What that does is tell Google, hey, when someone searches for this and I give them this page, it's not a good fit. So the higher your bounce rate is, the less likely you are to get served up in search results for those terms you're searching for.
And most communities, as they start including some of these engagement tools on their site, obviously they will see their bounce rate start diminishing because more people are spending time reading the educational content, interacting if they're doing a survey, if they're filling out a form for a guide, or if they're doing floor plans or engaging with live chat. So you'll start seeing that the more tools for engagement you include on the website, that bounce rate will get lower.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. Last question. What are the top 2 to 3 data points that I should be looking at in my analytics?
Well, traffic is a key one. How much traffic is coming to the site? How much of that traffic is staying on the site? And how much of that traffic is converting by filling out a form and giving you their contact information?
One other area that this is the nerdy part of me and the marketing side, is if you have a major campaign that goes out, a lot of time, depending on what media, if it's traditional print media or if it's a digital piece, one thing that people don't go back and look at is to see some of those campaigns. If you've tagged that campaign specifically with a term, a UTM term through Google, you can go through and analyze that data. You can be like, oh, well, we just spent a few hundred on this marketing campaign. Well, what traffic did it generate on our site? And there's some great tools within Google where you can very specifically, from a granular aspect, go back in and see kind of what that return on investment looked like, how much traffic it generated back to your website from those campaigns.
That is the nerdy part of you. Very important, but
Make sure that what I'm doing is
is worthwhile, right?
Absolutely.
That's what it comes down to. Awesome. Well, we're going to have to wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We will be sending out a copy of the recording as well the slides and a transcript within the next 24 to 36 hours. If you would like to see how your website performs and get a download, go to bit.ly/sls.dig. And then also we have 2 more webinars coming up in the series. Our next one is What is Inbound Marketing and Do I Really Need It? That's at November 17th at 1 p.m. You can reserve your seat at bit.ly/digi-2017 webinars. And even if you're unable to attend, go ahead and sign up and we'll go ahead and send you out a copy of the recording. Thank you so much, Charlene and Paul, for your insight and expertise.
Absolutely, and we hope to see you back next month because that's when it gets real fun and meaty.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.